Hello and welcome to the Canyons Are Calling podcast. It's Charles, your host for the show. Happy July. I cannot believe this year is already half over. Like, holy cow, where has the time gone? Most of you are out in the canyons. I see that, which is super awesome, and I'm jealous. However, I did get myself into a canyon yesterday on July 1st, which felt really great for my soul. I just did Rock Canyon, which is one of my favorites and one I've done like 100 times. So I knew that my shoulder would be able to handle it and my foot would be able to handle it and my wrist and everything. So it felt really great to get out into the canyon. I think I'm just going to focus on baby easy stuff and at least get out there until my body can get fully healed. Just working on getting this inflammation down and working on the physical therapy to strengthen my shoulder and my neck. So hopefully things will start working soon. If you have any tips, please reach out, because this has been a really long process and I had no idea that in my 40s I would be dealing with arthritis in my whole body. So if you have any tips, let me know. Anyway, I just want to say thank you guys so much. I keep checking my stats and we just passed my 30,000 listens to the podcast, which is pretty incredible for a person who doesn't feel like anyone wants to listen to anything that I have to say. Like, to have 30,000 people, or not people, but listens to the entire podcast in the 2.5 years that I've been doing that, I feel is pretty awesome. So I have 400 followers on Spotify, and I don't really know the other platforms. It doesn't really tell me any of that information, but I just really appreciate you guys for listening to what I have to say and for enjoying this podcast and for sharing it with your friends. Yeah, I just really appreciate that. If you love the show and wouldn't mind giving me some 5-star ratings and some reviews, and sharing it with friends, that just helps other people find out about the podcast. And it is finally starting to grow, which is really exciting. Also, I'm learning how to do Instagram, so I'm hoping to get a little bit better on there. You can follow us on Instagram. It's just Canyons Are Calling on Instagram. So give us a follow there. I'm trying to get better. I'm hoping to do a little more reels and canyons and things like that. Also, I have the Facebook group page, which is the Canyons Are Calling Facebook group page. And then also, if you enjoy the show and feel like the stories are helpful and impactful to your life, please consider donating on Patreon. I am the sole producer, editor, researcher, and interviewer of this podcast, and it does take a lot of my time, energy, and some financial money. So if you enjoy the show, just consider supporting it. That's patreon.com. There's several different tiers, and with those you get stickers or beer glasses, and then also the monthly canyon call, which I feel are pretty fun. We just get together the first Wednesday of every month and chat canyons. And sometimes I get guests on there, and sometimes we have a topic, different knots, different shoes, different gear, whatever. It's just a great way to get to know the community that likes to support the show. So please consider that. Also, I just take one-time donations either on PayPal or on Venmo. I have links to all of that in the show notes. And if you have an idea for the show, please reach out. A lot of the content that I have put out is just stories like this one today, where somebody had a crazy story in a canyon and they reached out and said, hey, maybe this should be on the podcast. And I feel like this one I wanted to push to the top of the list because I wanted to get it out kind of timely. This happened in May 11th, and this is coming out, it'll probably be the 3rd of July by the time it actually launches. So I just wanted to get out the information about a mountain lion in non-Mindbender and maybe Mindbender canyons. So be aware of that. Yeah, crazy story. What is the most crazy thing you have ran into in a canyon? I know I've run into a lot of dead things and carcasses. One time in Pine Creek, the carcass was so full of maggots, it was disgusting. It looked like rice. I was like, oh, that's moving, but that was pretty gross. One of the cooler things that I've ran into in a canyon was a baby spotted owl. And we were kind of worried about it because it had fallen out of the nest and we weren't really sure if it would survive in the middle of this canyon. So I told a friend of mine that works for the BLM, and she sent in the field researchers, and they discovered that there were 3 little babies. 2 of them were still in the nest, and then the one had fallen out, but the mom was still taking care of it. And she would continue taking care of it until its wings got strong enough that it would learn to fly. And so I thought that was really cool. They also learned that the Mexican spotted owls were in that certain area, and they didn't know that they were in that area. So it was really cool for them to know that they're there. And that's a protected bird. So it's kind of nice to know that they're doing well. Made my heart happy. Anyway, this is a crazy story about a mountain lion who had been trapped in the middle of a canyon for a couple of weeks, and it got stuck. Like, what would you do if you're in a canyon and there's a mountain lion blocking you from the last rappel? Like, holy shit. What would you do? Listen to what happened to this story. It is incredible. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, so today I'm here with Jennifer, and she has a crazy story about a mountain lion in, was it non-Mindbender Canyon?
It is maybe Mindbender.
Maybe Mindbender. Okay, there are so many Mindbenders. It's
Yes, there
hard
are.
to keep them apart. All right, so first of all, if we can just talk a little bit about how you got into the outdoors and how you got into canyoneering.
Okay. The how we got into canyoneering is kind of a longer story, but it does segue. But basically, I grew up in Colorado, so I was always out in the forest or in the mountains from a pretty young age, camping and things like that. And I think just experiencing the outdoors at a young age just planted that seed for me, and I've kind of always been outside since. Definitely doing all the Colorado things. So probably after high school is when I really started pursuing the outdoors more, and it was more in Colorado, but going over to the desert quite a bit too since high school. And then in the past 10 years, me and my husband have been going more and more, like we go multiple times a year. So how we got into canyoneering is kind of a backwards way. We actually got invited on a river trip in the Grand Canyon in 2019. One of our friends scored a cancellation permit, and it was kind of this last minute getting together of a group that could go. And I'd never been whitewater rafting, and I'd never been to the Grand Canyon, and I'm also slightly afraid of water, but the opportunity landed in our lap, and my husband was like, brought it up, and he's like, but we can't do it. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it feels like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, I was pretty scared about it, but I was like, this is a once in a lifetime thing. So somehow we were able to get, in like 5 weeks notice, we were able to get like enough of our shifts covered and things like that to go on this trip. So we went on the trip in the Grand Canyon. I'm embarrassed at how low on my bucket list the Grand Canyon was, because it was incredible. Yeah. There's not really any real words for it, but so that kind of started this kind of obsession with the Grand Canyon. And then
how long was your first trip into the Grand Canyon?
How long was it?
Yeah.
It was an 18 days on the river. Yeah, it was amazing.
That's so amazing.
It was amazing. And I was facing a lot of fears because I'm like kind of afraid of water too, but it was still it was just incredible. I mean, every turn was something new and magical. Like, it just never ended. So pretty obsessed with the canyon after that. And the following year, we got a backpacking permit to do some backpacking down in Grand Canyon. And when we were doing our research on the route we were going to do, we did like a stretch along the Tonto Trail. We saw that at one point we would be over Crystal Rapid, which was the only rapid that we almost got taken in. So it was just a really exciting rapid. It's one of the bigger ones. And so I was like, that's so cool. We're going to be above Crystal. We'll be able to see it again. And then started wondering if there was a way to get down to the rapid. And there's like a drainage there called Slate Creek or Slate Canyon. And that's what basically creates part of Crystal Rapid anyways. And so I was like, that'd be really cool if we could get down to river level to just like look at it from the other side. And so I tried to start doing research on the internet of anything about Slate Canyon. I no canyoneering knowledge, no rope knowledge, none of that. And it was just really hard to find any type of beta. There was like one thing in the corner of the internet somewhere where a guy was like, yeah, slate goes, look for this pinnacle feature. That's where you need to get into it. But it didn't really have any information on like what was in there. And so when we were backpacking, we made it over to Slate. We saw the pinnacle and we're kind of standing there like looking at it. And then we're like, this is probably stupid. Like, we don't have any idea what's down there. We don't have ropes. We weren't even like rope people at that point in time. So we just kind of decided to make the wise decision of like not going down into this unknown, like, and then we decided that if we ever came back, we're like, oh, we'll just like bring a rope in case we need to leave it like hanging, but still not really in the idea of like a rappelling sense, just to, if we came to a feature where we would need to like hand line out basically.
Gotcha.
So we got another backpacking permit for the Grand Canyon. I think it was like 6 months later. And I'd actually started a new job shortly before that. So I felt a little bit, I don't know, I didn't want to ask for the time off being the new guy. So we decided to just cancel that permit, and we still had a 4-day stretch off. So we went out to Moab, and my husband booked us a guided canyoneering trip. And that was through Desert Highlights.
Okay.
And it was awesome. Like, another fear was like, for me, was kind of heights and exposure, but I wanted to try it. And that kind of introduced us to it. The caveat to that is that my husband's a firefighter, so he has a lot of rope knowledge, knots, anchors, mechanical advantage type things. So he was very tuned into what the guide was doing. I was like dealing with my fears and not really, I was just like, make sure I get on my ATC right. But my husband was like super into what the guy was doing, and he was like already like chapters ahead with some of the rope work knowledge. Yeah. So that guided trip, we did Granary, and it was awesome, and we were just like hooked. And so after that, we bought ropes, we bought a couple other things, and we did a couple canyons, just he and I on our own around the Moab area, and pretty quickly learned that there was a lot that we didn't know. And we had a couple of like near misses, like we almost got stuck a rope one time. And we only had one rope, and we still had a rappel to go. And so that was kind of one moment where we're like, oh shit, like we don't know what we don't know, and we should probably like take some classes. Like, we were looking at Rich Carlson's material. Nice. And my husband was really getting into like, the MMO and contingencies and rig releasable. So we were kind of starting to do some research, but once we were out there was just a couple things that it was like, oh, that could have been really bad. Yeah. So after that, we took a few classes. We did a technical canyoneering class with Christopher Hagedorn. Nice. From Get in the Wild. And then we did, through him again, we did an advanced anchors and rigging class, and that was taught by Shane Wallace. And then the third one we took was like a partner and self-rescue class. We did that through Northwash with Jared and Tammy. So nice. Basically that's how we got into it, and then kind of got a little bit more of those foundations beneath us just to,
Yeah. Those are definitely skills that you need to have, or somebody in your party needs to have.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Learned so much too. So, and every time we go out, we're still learning. I mean, it's like big and small lessons everywhere, basically. So
yeah,
that's how that went.
Nice. That's what I love about canyoneering, is like every adventure teaches you something different. It's just whether or not you're available to learn it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So let's get into the mountain lion situation.
Okay. So this was in April and May, we had 2 good stretches of time off. So we were out doing canyons quite a bit. So we actually did maybe Mindbender 2 weeks apart, basically. We did it for the first time, and then we came back about 2 weeks later and did it again with a different set of people. Okay. So the first time we went through, so maybe Mindbender is 5 rappels, and after the 4th rappel, it kind of meets up with not Mindbender, and then both of them share the same last rappel. So the first time we went through, after the 4th rappel, I did notice mountain lion tracks, and I didn't know anything about freshness or not, but 2 weeks later, I mean, when we saw them again, they were definitely fresh. But the first time I noticed them, I could just see the print, and I was like, oh, this is like definitely an animal, but it's in this weird, the layer that it was in is it's after the fourth rappel, but before the fifth rappel. And it's kind of just this wide wash that's maybe a quarter mile long, but it's surrounded by vertical walls. So it was like, how the hell is there a mountain lion in here? And I remember pointing them out to the guys in the group, and one of the guys was like, those aren't mountain lion tracks. And I'm like, I mean, what would they be? Like, this isn't, nobody took their dog down here. There's no way, I don't think you could take a dog down there. Anything like that. So we definitely noticed them the 2 weeks before. I didn't really think that much of it. But I did remember them when we came back 2 weeks later. And the second time we went, it was my husband, who his name is Mike, and our friend Dan. So it was just three of us. And we got to that same point in the canyon where after the fourth rappel, we're now in this kind of wide wash area that you walk through, and then it like slots back up to the fifth rappel. So after the fourth rappel, we're walking through this wash, and the tracks that were there are still there, and now there's like way more. Like there a lot of trafficking going up and down this wash. Like the thing was going back and forth, and then the tracks were like, in hindsight, obviously fresh. Like I didn't really pick that up on that until later, but we're definitely noticing the tracks more. And this time, I kind of definitely had more of a sense of just kind of watching over my shoulder a lot more and just wondering where this thing was. Like, it just didn't make sense because we're below the canyon rim, but we're above the canyon floor. We're in this weird kind of terrace area that it's surrounded by walls, but it's like, where does this thing stay? Like, how did it get down here? What is it doing here?
How big are the drops between the area of where the tracks were?
So 4 rappels down, I think the rappels were like 20 feet, 50 feet, 66 feet, and then 76 feet. Okay. And the leading to the fourth rappel is like this off the ground kind of stemming area too.
Okay.
So, but once we're in this wash, I mean, there's kind of like debris shelves on the side and like sand, but all of it leads up to these like huge vertical walls, like hundreds of feet high. And I couldn't, it was just walled in. The whole thing was walled in.
Yeah.
So we're continuing down. We're like talking about the tracks. It's funny looking through my pictures because I'm like, have pictures of like, oh, the tracks. And then we come across like part of a vertebrae and I'm like, oh, the vertebrae. And we're just kind of going through this short wide wash part to where it starts narrowing again. And so before the fifth rappel, the walls kind of start narrowing, and then you get to this basically like a crack. It's not narrow enough to stem in, but you do have to get down like into this crack. And so the first thing was Dan and Mike were ahead of me, and I kind of collect rocks. And so I like was holding all these rocks, and then I'm like, oh, I got to put these in my bag so I can get down into the crack because you need like all hands and legs. Yeah. And when I was bending over putting the rocks in my bag, I just got like that spooked feeling that I've had in the wilderness before of just like, just another presence. And I like stood up straight and I'm like, holy shit. Packed my stuff in the bag and then like got down into the crack with the guys. And I'm kind of like, it's a narrow and it's kind of winding, the path of the water, like doing that thing. And now we're like deeper in it. The walls are probably like, 10 feet, 15 feet above our head, and we're in this crack. And I finally catch up to Mike and Dan, and Mike turns to me and he's like, the mountain lion's right there. And I was like, what? And then he's like, the mountain lion is right there. And so the craziest part about this is we were just about there's a pothole that's in this narrow part, and it's probably about 17 or 20 feet deep. It's awkward to navigate. It definitely is like a partner assist type of thing down. And Mike just so happened, he basically had his phone out at that time because he was just looking at the route info and like rereading what it said about the pothole, and said that kind of just out of the corner of his eye, he just happened to see something move. And when he looked up, the mountain lion's like on the other side of this pothole, looking right at him. So he actually did get a picture of it. Like he just stopped and got a picture of it. And then, but thank God we didn't get into that pothole yet, because I mean, you wouldn't be able to get out of it easily, you know, especially if we weren't going to leave, you know, we weren't leaving ropes or webbing or anything, because we're just going down canyon.
Right.
So when he tells me that he sees the mountain lion, I look up and I see it like peek its head around the curve in the wall. And I actually at first thought it was a baby, because the head seemed so small to me. But so I was like, oh, fuck, like there's a mom around and we're going to die.
Yeah.
But basically, we really quickly retreated to kind of give it space. You know, it's in the slot with us, like it's in the narrow. And so we all turn around and climb out of the crack, and kind of like now we're kind of on top on the ledges, like above this crack that the mountain lion is down in. And we kind of regroup and we're like, all right, is there any other way that we can get out of here? Because we need to get through that pothole. And I'm like getting so into the story, I'm like saying it so fast. He's basically sitting at our fifth anchor. And our fifth anchor is 90 feet off the ground. And so behind the mountain lion is the 90-foot rappel. And he's basically surrounded by these like overhanging curving walls. So he can't go anywhere either, because he has a 90-foot drop behind him. Yeah. And that drop too is slightly overhanging it at the top. Like it's just basically straight down with an overhang. So anyways, we get out of the canyon, and, you know, the first thing we're looking for is there any other way out? And so we get out our topo maps and all that stuff, and we're like looking and to see if there's anything that we can do. And it's like, no, like there's no other way out of here. We can't go back the way we came. We didn't leave any ropes fixed anyways. And I haven't done not Mindbender Canyon, but I know there's like a 50-foot rappel in there too. I mean, and so we're basically like, I'm like, we're stuck. Like we're totally stuck. We're in this pickle. We need to get past him. He needs to get past us. And I was just already ready. I'm like, we're getting rescued today. Like we carry a Garmin InReach, and I'm like, we have to call. Like there's no way out of this. And so we're kind of thinking about what to do. And then our friend Dan is like, well, if there's no other way for us to get out, like we have to try to spook it out of there. And so we basically like so we're above the crack, and it's kind of curves with the canyon. You know, we can't see down in there. We can't see where he is because the walls are curved and it's overhanging. But we kind of spread out along the crack because we wanted to have like a vantage point to see like where, if he came out, like we needed to be able to see in several different ways for this thing to come out. Because it was like, is he going to come up through the crack? Is he going to like jump and go another way? So we spread out over the crack. Which was also terrifying because I was on the upper canyon part of it, and I was still worried that there might have been another mountain lion in the mix. But I mean, that fear was slowly diminishing because I think that a mother would have made herself known. But where I was standing, there was like behind me is kind of like the ledge of debris and some sand and like some bushes. And I thought that if the thing was going to come out at all, it was going to jump up behind me. I'm trying to think of a cat, and I'm like, They like to have the vantage point. They like to stalk. Like it's not going to go below us. But we spread out along this crack, and I felt really vulnerable there because I'm like, oh, I'm trying to look down into the crack. I have to also watch behind me, and I have to also watch up canyon. And thankfully, my husband at that point was like, are you good? And I'm like, actually, can you stand like across from me so that he could watch my back? And so his back was to the like vertical wall, and we're each on a different side of the crack. And so now we're all set up to where we can see if the thing comes out at all.
Yeah.
And our friend Dan was closest towards the mountain lion, and he threw like two very small rocks in there, like kind of just like threw him down into the crack like sideways, and you can hear him like tinking off the wall. And then the cat kind of started chattering a little bit, like the same way if you have house cats, like when they see a moth or something and they like do that like chattery thing. It chattered at the rocks, but we pretty much bailed on that plan like pretty quickly. Like we weren't aggressive at all, small rocks, and pretty much quickly figured out that it probably wasn't going to be coming out. And I was thinking that too. I'm like, we're above it. It's below us. It's walled in. It can't see us. I was like, there's no way that this thing's coming out. Like, it's not coming out. It will outweigh us. Like, we're stuck.
Yeah.
So we got back together. We regrouped. Started looking at kind of like our food and our water to see where we were at with that. Cause I'm like, we're going to be here a while. And then just kind of started thinking about, using the inReach. And so my husband was actually thinking to text one of the guys that we went through that canyon with like 2 weeks before, cause he would know exactly where we were. And we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden we hear this like loud thud, like echoing off the canyon walls. And just before hearing that thud, it was like, I didn't hear it at the time, but it was almost like this, like two slips, like two like slip sounds, and then thud, like a huge thud. And we all just kind of looked at each other like, holy shit. Our friend Dan was like, maybe that was a rock. And I was like, there's no rocks over there. Like, we were in it last week. It's just 90-foot drop, sand floor in the crack. And I was like, I think that like we just killed a mountain lion. And it like made my heart sink, like hearing that noise. It was just like the thing either jumped or fell. And so we're just like staring at each other, like in disbelief about this whole predicament that we're in. And I was like, that was a mountain lion. Like, the mountain lion is dead on the ground, 90 feet below. It has to be. And so the next part of all we could do is Dan was like, well, we got to go in and see
if
like,
he's still there. Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, like none of us wanted to go back into the crack at all. And so we walked as far above it as we could, like kind of on the ledge. And because we were trying to just see if we could see in, and you just really couldn't. But we walked far enough along that we noticed a bush on the ledge that had just a piece of like red webbing strung from it. And I'm assuming it was there. Whoever placed it, I'm assuming, was bypassing the pothole, because it was past the pothole feature above. So like,
gotcha.
So we saw the webbing, and I was like, oh, there's webbing here. And we were kind of like, on our bellies, like trying to peek down into the crack. Like, we just couldn't see anything. And so we kind of checked the webbing. It was, I don't even know what it was really rigged to. It was like kind of around this like dinky tree, kind of around this bush thing. And Mike was like, all right, I'll be the one that goes back into the crack. So we backed him up with a meat anchor with Dan, and just he got on rappel, and he's like leaning as far over this crack and trying to like walk along it to see if he could see down, to see if the mountain lion was in there. And he's like, I can't fucking see. And he's like, oh, this is so scary. And we're pretty sure that the noise we heard is the thing jumping, but it was just terrifying. Like, the whole thing was terrifying. And so he gets on rappel, he goes down into the crack. Dan followed quickly behind him. I remember Dan saying something like, he's like, if you're about to fight a cat in a 3-foot box, like, I need to be in there with you. So Dan went down there with it. And then they kind of walked the couple like turns and got to that, 90-foot drop. And Mike's like, it's not in here. And I was like, look over the edge. Like, is it on the ground? And he looks over the edge, and it wasn't down there either, but you could see where it landed.
Wow.
So now the next part of it is like, it's still not over, because we still have to go down to wherever
the cat just landed.
Terrifying. And so I was still up on the ledge by the bush. I was kind of waiting for their all clear, and then we needed to lower our packs down into the crack, and then I got down in there, and I was kind of crazy because I was kind of shaky the whole time, but there wasn't really any time for fear all the same. Like, I wanted to kind of be upset, and I wanted to kind of be like, oh, I'm so scared.
Yeah.
But we're never really in any imminent danger. But the other thing was, I'm like, you need to focus. Like, you still have to get down 90 feet of wall and like get on the rope correctly, and just like no time for fear. Worry about it later. So we got to the anchor, rigged the thing, and then Dan then was the first one that went over, which was like, oh my God, like, let us know, I guess, if you run into a mountain lion down there. There's nothing we can do about it. So he got down there, and I mean, the mountain lion's nowhere to be seen at this point. And then all of us ended up getting down there. So yeah, so you could see where it landed. It definitely landed on all fours, and it probably, like, I imagine, like, hit its chest wall on the ground, because there was kind of like this indentation, but you could like tell where the 4 feet were. There's kind of these claw marks. And then I couldn't tell where it went from there. Like, the guys thought they saw prints that went up into it. Again, it was more of just this like debris, like at the bottom of these like sheer walls, and a bunch of bushes up there. And I know the thing was in there watching us, and it was terrifying. So, but it didn't make himself known. I couldn't see where the tracks were. And then, but we're still in this like corner of this canyon, with quite a ways to go out and around this corner. Like, we're boxed in there too. And it was just daunting, like, because the thing was in the bushes. Like, it was in there. It was watching us. We know that it was probably hurt, I imagine.
Right.
So we just gathered our thing quickly and like scurried out of there. And I just kept looking over my shoulder the whole time. Just, I don't know. It was terrifying. So.
Yeah. I can't imagine. Like, this is the second story I have heard about a mountain lion in a canyon. And
yeah. Just everything. The precise location of, I mean, we were just so boxed in with it for a second, and thank God the pothole was somewhat separating us. But if we'd gotten into the pothole, like, it would have been a way different situation, because then we really would have been cornered. I don't know, just the whole thing. And of all the options running through my head of how we were going to get out of that situation, I never thought that the thing was going to jump. Like, I'm like, I know they're afraid of us, but I didn't think it was that afraid.
Right. It's just 90 feet is a long way. And
the sound alone, I'll never forget that sound of him hitting. Like, and I mean, my heart sank when I heard that noise, and I know, I mean, and Dan was like, that is the best possible outcome of this whole thing. And I'm like, I get it. Like, I'm glad, but I feel so terrible that,
like, from there, would the cat be able to go down canyon eventually and get out if it were not like internally bleeding from hitting its chest on the ground?
Well, and that's why I was like, maybe in some weird way we saved its life, because I definitely think it was stuck up in that layer
in between there.
And water was probably going to be an issue soon, and there definitely wasn't really a food source. Like, it's just this just layer of canyon. So yeah, if it wasn't, I hope they have 9 lives. If it wasn't hurt, it would have been able to get out of there, and with plenty of, now it's on the canyon floor. Yeah. But I definitely think it was up in the bushes. I mean, there were no tracks going out of that
down
corner.
The canyon.
Like, it was up there watching us leave, which was such a crazy feeling. It's nuts.
I can't imagine.
It's wild. Yeah. I haven't stopped thinking about it, because it's just so.
Because that was just a couple weeks ago. Like, I'm recording this.
May 11th.
Yeah, and we're recording June 27th, so a month and a half, 2 months almost.
Yeah.
Dang.
And I didn't know to, one of my friends was like, oh, should you call the Division of Wildlife and tell them? And I'm like, I don't know. But I started looking up on Utah's like Division of Wildlife pages, and it was kind of like, don't report sightings of a mountain lion, like, unless, it was more talking about in like a neighborhood sense. But it was kind of like, but then I was like, I don't know, does someone need to go and check? I don't know, like, check on it.
Yeah.
See if it's.
I feel like posting stuff like this in canyoneering forums specifically would be good, just so that if he's still there in the area, like, canyoneers would be able to know. But I worry that, like, the sheriff would go in and just, like, shoot it for no reason. Or, like, relocate it, which is good for the community, but I don't know. Like, if it's not
Yeah.
aggressive, it deserves to be in its home.
It definitely wasn't aggressive.
And if people are aware that it's there, then they can either choose to go in with the cat or not go in with the cat. But just knowing that
I never followed up on it, honestly.
Yeah, interesting.
I didn't follow up.
So I wonder if anyone in the community has done that canyon and seen wild, mountain lion tracks since May.
Well, I looked on Road Trip Ryan, and there was a comment after. Yeah, it was after the first time we went through and before the second time, and the people were like, "There are definitely fresh tracks in here."
In that middle section where you guys were at.
Yeah, those people I think did not mind Bender, but it feeds into that same wash.
Gotcha.
So my husband left a comment and was like, "We saw it," but we didn't tell anyone. And then it jumped 90 feet.
It jumped 90 feet to its exit.
Or something.
8 lives left and is still gone from the canyon.
Yeah.
Wow, I can't imagine.
It was wild. My husband got an excellent picture.
Please send that to me so I can post it with your
crouched. And it's so hard to explain the feature that we were in. I'm like, no, we didn't just see a mountain lion scurry across. We were in the narrow with it, and no way out for anyone involved.
I'm just imagining this super twisty sandstone where it's just
yeah,
you have
and
to
it was
back
looking
up.
Our friend Dan actually caught a tiny video of it too, and I'll ask him if I can have it, because
that'd be cool.
It's kind of hard to tell, but you can tell that he's looking up, and he's looking all around for a way out, and there's no way out.
He's probably as scared of you guys as you are of him.
Oh, I know.
Oh, that's crazy.
Nuts, yeah.
I mean,
and then the exit after that, the exit's kind of a little bit spicy, which that's I felt the most nerve-wracking, until the lion was the most nerve-wracking part of that canyon. I'm like, oh, that damn exit. But after that, I was like, whatever. I guess we just faced a mountain lion. So
is he stalking us through this whole exit?
Yeah, I was like, I just wanted out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. The places we go.
No. I was like, they did not prepare us for this in the classes.
No, that's one thing I have not learned. Yeah, I mean, the first story I heard, it was a guy and his son. They were going through Dead-Eyed Dick Canyon, and they saw some fresh tracks, and he knew, because he's a guide and stuff, and so he knew how to tell how. I wonder if I can get him on so he could teach us all how to know how fresh tracks are, right? Because there's a little cup that happens, and so if the cup is a certain way, it's a suction cup type thing, right? And so you can tell it's a certain way, but then as the wind kind of weathers it down, you can tell that the track's older and older and older. But I'm totally not an expert on this, so I should probably try to get somebody on who is. Anyway, he was...
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, this guy was teaching his son how you can tell how fresh the track was, and that this track that they saw was particularly super fresh. And they mosey on down the canyon a little bit, and they have to go under a log jam. And then he looks up into the face of the mountain lion. And I'm like, he's got a 10-year-old kid with him. After you shit your pants, what do you do, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But there, he was in an open area where he could just make himself big, make a lot of noise. The cat would run one way, he could go the other. You guys are completely trapped in a narrow, twisty slot canyon where neither of you have a way to go to get away from each other. So
it's that 90-foot drop.
That's crazy.
Is the real crux of the problem. In hindsight, the tracks were definitely, from both trips, were different. The first time they were just a little bit blown over, and it was hard to tell what it was, but it was an obvious print and a pattern and a line, so it was this is a track of an animal. And then I'll send you the pictures too, because I took some of the pictures of the tracks the day that we met the lion, and in hindsight, or anyone's probably gonna be like, oh yeah, dummy, those were fresh, and you guys were walking right along them, but there was really only one way out anyways. So
right, so what choice did you have?
There was no choice. It didn't occur to me that we were about to come face to face with the thing, but
wow.
yeah, there is a definite difference in the track appearance from those two trips.
Yeah, that would be really cool to see.
Yeah, I'll send them to you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I don't even know, like, what did you guys learn from the situation? What could you teach us from this? I have no idea.
I don't know. I mean, I was definitely worried that, I don't know, people would give us criticism for how we tried to handle it, but I really feel like we were, immediately recognized to give it space, to back away, we were not aggressive. It was definitely a pickle that all of us were in. And I think I'm still processing the whole thing, just almost like, not to sound hippy dippy, but on a spiritual level too, because it's just, these are like these magical, elusive creatures, and just face to face. So I definitely did not expect it to jump. Like, I thought that the lion was going to win, basically in the standoff. I didn't think that that was going to happen. So I think I've been thinking on that a little bit of like, wow, they really are that afraid of us. I mean, he was outnumbered, but I don't know. I don't really know much about mountain lions, but I've been very aware of them growing up in Colorado, and I've never encountered one. I've definitely felt watched a few times in my life, but certainly never thought I would run into one in a desert, and then also like in a slot.
Right.
But I don't know what the learning would be.
I mean, I feel like you guys did what you needed to do to give it space. Like,
yeah, I don't think I would do anything different. I don't know what else differently we really could have done.
Yeah.
I definitely thought we were getting rescued. I was like, this is a legit rescue. Like, we're not injured, but like, we are really stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because if you keep trying to go forward, he might attack. If he comes back and tries to get out of the slot, he might attack.
Yeah.
I could totally.
And when we thought about waiting it out, I'm like, we can't wait. Like, because we can't shift, sneeze, adjust. Like, anytime that it hears us, it's going to restart the clock, is what I imagine. I don't know.
Right, yeah.
But I'm like, it's going to outweigh us. Like, he is not coming out. Like, we are stuck.
Yeah, right. Wow. That's such an incredible story. I'm glad it worked out as well as it did for everybody.
Too. I hope it's okay.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know, but
yeah, if anyone's done maybe Mindbender recently or not Mindbender, and
anyone want to go check up in the
knows about
sand ledge in the bush and see if there's a lion carcass up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it's okay.
Me too.
That's an area I have not yet canyoned, which is crazy. I need to get out there.
What's that?
That's an area that I have not yet canyoned, which is crazy.
It's cool. Yeah. It's awesome. It's incredible.
What's nuts is my first canyoneering book I ever bought like 12 years ago was Steve Allen's Canyoneering in the Swell. And that's the area that I have not been, the Swell and the Roost. It's stupid. It's so close, but it's so far.
Yeah, there's a ton. So
yeah,
plenty of time. Won't get bored.
For sure. All right. Well, I have a few questions that I like to ask everybody at the end of my podcast. Canyoneering makes me super hungry. What is your favorite in canyon snack?
In canyon snack, there's two. We found this like Tex-Mex trail mix that's really good. It kind of has some spiciness and saltiness, especially the sesame sticks in it. And then our other favorite thing is sour gummy worms, but the Kroger brand is the best. But they're freaking awesome. They're sour and sweet.
Nice.
So those are always good for morale.
So I don't eat a lot of canyon candy, but I assume that all gummies would be the same. They're not.
No, these ones, well, I mean, I just think the Kroger
brand.
brand's better. I have no merit, or I don't know what my measurement for why they're better, but they're just so good. But they're good because they're salty and sweet.
Yeah.
So
that's always a nice combination.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about your favorite after canyon beverage?
well, I mean, water is always good, but we really enjoy Moscow mules that come in a can. So we'll usually have one of those.
I've had one of those and it was actually really good.
They're very good. They go down really easy, but they're good. Or like a Pacifico, you know.
Nice.
Yeah.
What is an essential piece of gear that you carry with you?
I would say I really enjoy the VT a lot. It has a lot of uses. And then the Petzl Basic, I've been, use it a lot, but it's really awesome to have. So those two pieces.
Nice. I don't have a basic, but they are awesome when I see people using them. Especially because, is that the one that stops if you like take your hand off, or is that a different one?
It does have a biting feature, like, so you could slide it up.
Yeah.
And, like you'd use it to
like a project, a process catcher. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And then so that like combined with the micro traction to a sender rope, I feel really cool when I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Like, this is awesome.
I switched to the Kroll, which I kind of like. It's more caving style, but it's probably the same type of system. I feel like the Kroll is just a tiny bit smaller than the basic, but you can also rappel from the basic, right? Or not? Is it only ascending? I should know this.
No, you can't rappel from it.
Okay. I'm like, I should know this, but I'm kind of stupid.
No, you use what you use,
Right. That's why everyone needs to get efficient with what they use. And then
I know, like the classes were interesting in that way because it was like very many different ways to do the same thing.
Exactly.
But first it was overwhelming because I'm like, like trying to pack all this information in. And then I'm like, like you kind of find what works for you. Mm-hmm. It's good to know a couple of alternatives in case you're in, a jam. But yeah.
I mean, even being in this sport for 12 years, like there's a lot that I don't know, and then a lot that I do. So
yeah,
it's fun. It's always evolving too, and I feel like new things are coming out, like the nano traction and stuff like that. Which
like I said, there's something every time we go. There's like some takeaway.
Yeah,
that just makes us more.
Somebody has a new toy that you're like, what is that? Yeah. How does that work? Yeah. I got to get one. Yeah.
I don't know what the takeaway from the lion is, but.
Have you researched, like, you brought up like spirituality or whatever. Have you researched like what a bobcat's spirit animal means?
I actually have a book that kind of talks about things like that.
Okay.
And I did read it, and I can't entirely remember what it said. It was kind of about like holding your own and leadership and like stoicness, But yeah,
because I know I see a lot of hummingbirds lately, so I was like, what does that mean for me?
I'll look it up for you. I guarantee that's in there.
Yeah, I've researched it a little bit, and it's kind of like a transitional, but be strong and like go with the flow kind of. Good luck, remember kind of thing.
Whatever I read about the mountain lion, I was like, oh, this is so.
It means,
fitting to also other things that were going on in my life at the same time. And I was like, this is strange, but,
That's awesome.
I know not everyone thinks that way about things like that, but I do.
I do too, yeah. Like, to each their own, but the universe talks in different ways, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So on that note, what has canyoneering brought to your life? How has it changed it?
Well, I mean, it's amazing. I love the desert. And so it's amazing I call it wandering around in the desert. And then when you get to a point that you can't go farther, just get on your rope and go. It's not exactly wandering, but
it is though.
I think for me, because there was an element of facing some fears with it. Like I do have a fear of heights and kind of exposure, and I kind of like to face fears. Like same with the river trip through the Grand Canyon. But fear is interesting in that way that it's like that stupid quote, like feel the fear and do it anyways. I just feel like when you face your fears and you just learn so much about yourself and what you're capable of. And
for sure.
but other than that, it's pretty amazing to be in these places that, are, I mean, probably more and more seen, but very many of the places we end up in canyons are seldom seen, or you can't get there by any easy means, and it just feels pretty special,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Only the bold that are brave enough to get there. For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any safety advice you'd like to leave our listeners with before we say goodbye?
One thing that we've kind of learned is, it's really good to have like the route beta and kind of like info on what's going to be in a canyon. But somewhere along the lines, we also learned to not make the canyon fit the beta. So there would be like a couple times where we'd think that we were at the feature that the route talked about. And this was actually another thing that we learned, like we thought we'd be at the feature that was explained in the route. And then we realized later that we weren't. But like, had we continued on as if like, oh, well, we passed that feature and now the next thing we're going to encounter is this, we actually would have kind of gotten into trouble. So we try to approach every canyon as if there is no information about it, even though we do read up on them and kind of learn what to expect, but also in the sense that they change with every storm and things like that. So you can't really count on the beta that much, and still just deal with what's in front of you and be wise and yeah, like just try not to make the canyon fit what you read. Yeah. If that makes sense.
100%. Like one thing that I learned early on is that the reason it's called beta is because it's always changing. Like with the storms and whatever. That's why it's not like, trip information or whatever. And then also like, if reality differs from the beta, 100% use reality. So if you think like beta says the rappel's 100 feet, but now it might be 120 because a flash flood came through and washed a bunch of sand out, like don't set it 100 feet, set it to the bottom. Like that's really good information. I like that. Well said.
I can't remember how we came to that, because it was something like there was a 20-foot rappel and we came to what we thought, and it was followed by like a 66-foot rappel in whatever canyon we were in. But we got to an area that was actually seemed like the 20-foot rappel, but you could actually down climb it too. But this was like, we were still kind of newer, so we weren't as good at down climbing things or realizing, the way.
Yeah.
And just thinking like, oh, this is a 20-foot rappel, so the next one is this many feet. And I wish I remember the details better, but there's something about the back-to-backness of the rappels that we almost mismeasured our rope because you couldn't see the ground, and I don't know. So that was our takeaway, is like, oh, we made that 20-foot thing be the rappel, and it wasn't. And so
I also I did Granary Canyon, and we were going to do upper Granary and lower Granary, but we didn't go up over this ridge to lower Granary like you're supposed to, I guess. We continued down the wash like in Utah or like in Zion area. If you're doing an upper and lower canyon, you just stay in the same wash. Mm-hmm. And so we got to what was supposed to be the first rappel in lower Granary, but it did not meet the beta.
Yeah.
It was completely different. And so we're trying to do some research. A friend of ours sets the rope and rappels down. Another friend was able to actually get service and call a guy who had done the canyon before. And he was like, you're not in the right spot. And what we had looked at on the map looked like a really big drop at the very end. And we didn't have that much rope. We had, I don't know, like maybe 200 feet of rope. And what we didn't know what the big drop at the end was going to be. And so we told our friend to come back up. And he kind of fought us for a minute, and he was like, this canyon goes. And we're like, we know it goes. We can see that on the Gaia, but it looks like a really big drop. And I have heard that people get in that situation, and that drop is like 300 feet, and they end up needing rescue. Because somehow, and I don't know if it's like the Moab book that I had or if it was Road Trip Ryan Beta, but somehow they need to get the information out that you need to like transition over to another area in order to do lower Granary, because we ended up just going back to our top car and not doing the lower section. But yeah, had we kept going and not called our friend and not like checked the beta, we would have had to get rescued too. And that's kind of crazy. So also, like, yeah, deal with the canyon in real time, but also, like,
also, I was just going to say,
check ahead a little bit.
Kind of an argument for why you should know,
yeah,
you know, the info. I mean, we always try to do we always do the research on what we're going through, but
yeah, like somehow we just missed that back a little ways we were supposed to like turn right or something, but yeah. Anyway, we learned, and we're still here. Yeah, crazy. Well, I don't know if you want people to reach out to you or if you just want to stay kind of anonymous. How do you feel?
Oh, I don't care. I'll have to send you that picture for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really on Facebook. I'm on Instagram though. I don't mind if you share it.
Okay. What's your Instagram?
It's Zen Ascent. I always think it's always been Zen Ascent. I'm like, no, it should be Zen Descent. But
were you a climber before you got into canyoneering?
No, but I think it was like from doing like the mountaineering. Like
gotcha.
Doing a lot of the in Colorado was the ascent part.
Gotcha.
And now I'm like, like I want to go down now. Yeah, it's Zen Ascent at no, not at Gmail. It's just Zen Ascent. So it's ZENN Ascent on Instagram.
I'll have the link in there for you. So if anyone wants to reach out and ask questions or just say congratulations on outrunning a mountain lion, that's fucking crazy.
I know. They're telling me what we did wrong.
I don't feel like you did anything wrong. Like, I don't understand. Like, I can't think of anything that I would have done differently, honestly. Except I probably would have pooped my pants. Maybe I would have pooped in the rest stop. I don't know.
I wanted to. Oh my gosh, that whole time I had to pee. Like, I had to pee for a long time, and I was like, I'll just pee after the last rappel. And then, obviously, that delayed us a bit. And by the time I got down, and I had to pee, which was also terrifying.
Right, because he's in the tree somewhere.
Yeah, because I'm like, oh, like I have my ass out and my back to the line and I'm peeing. And like, you know, it's like not easy to pee as a girl canyoneering.
No, it's not.
It's like, drop, you know, it's like a whole thing. Yeah. But I had to pee so bad, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel so vulnerable.
That's crazy. Anyway, I gotta pee now, and the canyons are calling, so we should probably go.
All right.
Cool. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Okay, well, what an incredible story. Like, what would you have done in that situation? If any of you have been into maybe or non-Mindbender Canyon and have seen evidence of the cat still there, or hopefully not a dead carcass, that would be a worst case scenario. My husband used to be a hunter like 15 years ago, and he says that he has seen cats jump like 100 feet and just bounce and continue running. So we are hopeful that this cat still has at least 8 of its 9 lives left, and that it's just thriving and was finally able to get pushed out of the canyon so it's not stuck there anymore. Ultimately, that would be the best case scenario for everybody. But yeah, if you've seen any evidence, if you've done that canyon, reach out and let us know. It would be kind of cool to have some closure on this story. And if you have any crazy stories like this, if you run into cool animals in the canyon, let us know. Like, reach out at thecanyonsarecalling@gmail.com and we'll get your story on the show. I'm also looking for stories for flash floods and near misses. So if you have any of those stories, I'd love to get those in on that little mini series that I'm going to do. I've got some cool stories coming up just to kind of keep us aware and out of situations, because sometimes when you go in not expecting a lot of rain, 10%, 20%, it actually does rain, bad things happen. So I just want to keep people a little bit more aware of what happens in the Utah monsoon season. And I'd love for you to share your story. That would be super awesome. And then again, I also just wanted to mention the Facebook groups and the Instagram group. Facebook is The Canyons Are Calling. Instagram is Canyons Are Calling. Like I said earlier, I'm going to try to get a little more active on there. I've had some friends kind of teach me some pointers, and I'm going to give it a go. So we'll see what happens. And also reach out at thecanyonsarecalling@gmail.com. You can get yourself some beer glasses and stickers at thecanyonsarecalling.com. And if you'd like to make some donations on that Patreon and join us on our monthly Canyon chats, that's patreon.com/thecanyonsarecalling. I'm on my way to float down the river today. Just have a relaxing day with some friends and enjoy some cold water on a 100-degree day. So, yeah, today the river's calling. I gotta go.